The first time Daniel Hayes saw her, she was standing in the rain outside the glass doors of Hayes Global, clutching a soaked folder against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her alive. People rushed around her without looking twice. Expensive cars lined the curb. Executives barked into phones. Security guards watched her carefully, already deciding she didn't belong there. And honestly, she didn't. Her coat was too thin for the freezing November storm. One heel was broken. Her dark hair stuck to her pale face, and exhaustion hung in her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. Daniel should have walked past her like everyone else. Instead, he stopped. "What are you doing here?" he asked coldly. The woman straightened immediately. "I'm here for the assistant interview." Daniel glanced at the paper in her trembling hand. The ink had smeared from the rain. "You're 3 hours late." Her lips parted, but no excuse came out. Just embarrassment. The CEO of one of the largest tech companies in Chicago stared at her for another second before speaking again. "Interview's over." Something inside her face cracked quietly at those words. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just, defeated. And Daniel recognized that look. Because he saw it every morning in the mirror. He sighed impatiently. "What's your name?" "Emily Carter." "You have experience?" "Yes, sir. Administrative work, scheduling, accounting support, customer service." "Then why do you look like you haven't eaten in 2 days?" She froze. That told him enough. Daniel hated weakness. Hated desperation even more. But for reasons he couldn't explain, he heard himself say, "Come inside before you collapse on my sidewalk." That single sentence changed both of their lives. Inside the towering building, Emily sat stiffly across from him in his private office while an assistant brought coffee she barely touched. Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her resume. No college degree. Several short-term jobs. A 2-year employment gap. "Why the gap?" he asked. Emily looked down. "My mother got sick." "And now?" "She passed away last year." Daniel nodded once. No sympathy. No soft expression. But something tightened painfully in his chest. Because 5 years ago, his younger brother had died alone in a hospital room while Daniel sat in a board meeting choosing profits over family. Ever since then, his world had become colder. Simpler. Safer. Work. Numbers. Meetings. Silence. No relationships. No trust. No attachments. At 38 years old, Daniel Hayes had everything money could buy and absolutely nothing that mattered. "She won't last a week," his senior manager warned later that afternoon after Emily was hired. Daniel didn't disagree. He hadn't hired her because she impressed him. He hired her because pity was easier than guilt. But by the end of her first week, something strange happened. Emily never complained. Not when executives dumped work on her. Not when she stayed late organizing impossible schedules. Not when Daniel snapped at her for tiny mistakes. She simply nodded and kept going. Quietly. Efficiently. Like someone who had learned long ago that survival depended on endurance. And Daniel began noticing things. She memorized every employee's name within days. She brought coffee to the exhausted interns working overtime. She fixed problems before anyone asked. Most importantly, she never treated Daniel like a billionaire. Everyone else feared him. Admired him. Used him. Emily simply worked for him. Nothing more. One night, nearly 3 months after she started, Daniel walked out of his office close to midnight and found her asleep at her desk. A spreadsheet glowed on her computer screen. She had been helping the finance department after finishing her own work. Daniel frowned. Emily. She woke instantly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Why are you still here? I needed to finish these reports. That's not your department. They needed help. Daniel stared at her tired face. You work too much. A tiny smile appeared. You just described yourself. That caught him off guard. Nobody joked with him. Nobody dared. Yet somehow, hearing it from her didn't annoy him. It almost felt normal. And Daniel realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, he didn't dread coming to work. Weeks turned into months. Emily slowly became part of the rhythm of his life. She reminded him to eat. Forced him to take breaks. Argued with him when he skipped sleep before major meetings. One afternoon she walked into his office, took away his fourth cup of coffee, and replaced it with water. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Are you giving orders to your boss? Yes. You're brave. No, she said softly. Just concerned. Concerned. Such a simple word. Yet Daniel couldn't remember the last time someone genuinely cared whether he lived or died. That terrified him more than anything. Because caring led to loss. And Daniel Hayes had buried everyone he ever loved. So he started pulling away. Becoming colder again. Shorter replies. Longer hours. Closed doors. Emily noticed immediately. One evening she finally asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Daniel kept signing documents without looking up. No. You've barely spoken to me for 2 weeks. That's called professionalism. Silence filled the office. Then Emily quietly said, "You don't have to push people away before they leave." Daniel's pen stopped moving. Slowly, he looked at her. How would you know anything about that? Pain flickered behind her eyes. Because I do it too. That answer stayed with him long after she left. A month later, disaster struck the company. Someone leaked confidential information to the media. Millions disappeared overnight. Investors panicked. Board members demanded answers. Daniel trusted almost no one already. Now he trusted nobody. The board blamed internal employees. Executives turned on each other. Fear spread through the company like poison. Then anonymous evidence appeared pointing directly at Emily. Fake financial transfers. Security access logs. Confidential files sent from her computer. The board wanted her arrested immediately. Daniel sat in the conference room staring at the evidence while executives shouted around him. She manipulated you. She's been stealing company data for months. You hired her without proper background checks. Daniel said nothing. Because logically, it looked bad. Very bad. But deep down, something refused to believe it. He remembered the woman standing in the rain with broken shoes. The woman who stayed late helping interns. The woman who forced him to drink water because she worried about his health. No. Something was wrong. She didn't do it, Daniel finally said. The room exploded. You're blinded by emotion. She fooled you. She's using you. But Daniel stood. And for the first time in years, he trusted his instincts instead of numbers. Until I see undeniable proof, he said coldly, nobody touches her. That night he found Emily alone on the rooftop of the building, crying silently into the freezing wind. She quickly wiped her tears when she saw him. You shouldn't be up here, he said. They all think I did it. Daniel walked beside her. Did you? She looked at him then. Not offended. Not angry. Just hurt. If you have to ask, then you never really trusted me. The words hit harder than he expected. Because she was right. Trust didn't mean believing someone only when it was easy. It meant standing beside them when everything looked impossible. And Daniel realized something painful. Emily had trusted him long before he trusted her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly. Maybe because powerful men like Daniel Hayes rarely apologized. Maybe because he truly meant it. Days later, Daniel launched his own investigation behind the board's back. He worked non-stop, following digital trails personally. And eventually, he found the truth. The leak came from his own chief financial officer, Victor Lang. A man Daniel had trusted for 12 years. Victor had framed Emily because she accidentally discovered suspicious transactions while helping the finance department late at night. She was never supposed to notice. But she did. When Daniel confronted Victor privately, the older man laughed bitterly. "You trusted a poor nobody over me?" Daniel's voice turned deadly calm. "She earned it." Victor was arrested 2 days later. The company survived. But something inside Daniel changed permanently. For years, he believed trust was weakness. That love only created pain. That isolation protected people. Emily proved him wrong. One snowy evening near Christmas, Daniel found her in the office decorating a tiny artificial tree at reception. "You stayed late again," he said. She smiled. "Someone has to make this place feel human." Daniel stood there quietly watching her fix crooked ornaments. Then he asked the question that had lived inside him for months. "Why did you stay?" Emily looked confused. "What? You could have quit 100 times. I was difficult. Cold. Distrustful. So why stay?" Her expression softened. "Because lonely people don't always need advice, Daniel." She stepped closer. "Sometimes they just need someone who refuses to give up on them." For a moment, neither spoke. Outside the windows, snow fell across the city lights. Inside that giant building filled with wealth and ambition, two broken people finally understood each other. Daniel had hired her out of pity. But somewhere along the way, Emily became the one person who brought warmth back into his frozen world. The one person who saw the man behind the CEO. The one person he could finally trust. And for the first time in many years, Daniel Hayes no longer felt alone. Because sometimes, the people who enter our lives at their weakest moments become the strongest reason we keep going. And sometimes trust isn't built through perfection. It's built through loyalty, forgiveness, and the courage to stay when leaving would be easier. That was the greatest success Daniel Hayes ever achieved. Not the company. Not the billions. But learning that even the loneliest hearts can heal when someone chooses to care enough to remain.